We're
Boom.
live.
We are recording. And so this is when I come in and I make a little bit of a mess and everybody just cleans it up from me from Citizens Committee staff. But if you look in the chat, you'll see who I am. I am Dr. Rasan Harris, the new-ish CEO of Citizens Committee for New York City. I have the pleasure of running this illustrious organization that was created in the financial crisis in 1975. And as the Lord would have it, my first day was March 16th, 2020, the day when New York City shut down. So I am a CEO that has been brought in the truest tradition of this organization to help people come together, figure out how to get through crisis. Help ain't coming from the hills. We are who we're looking for. That's going to bring New York City back. For those of you who don't know what we really stand for, we believe in people power. We believe that when people come together, you can do amazing things to change your neighborhood. And when you aggregate what everybody's doing to change their neighborhood, you can make New York City awesome. We do not, and this is one of the things that folks might get confused about, we don't just care about one issue, and we are not the Lord and Lordesses of like what New York City needs. We listen to what community members say they need. We look at the ideas that we get from across the 5 boroughs, and we try to use the limited resources that we have to spread facility capacity for great leaders across the 5 boroughs to do awesome stuff, to make New York City a place where opportunity is accessible to all people. So if you don't remember anything else from today's conversation, you need to find your neighbor. And as they would say in church, neighbor, Citizens Committee is a place that brings people together and they can give you some money to make sure that that happens. And today's conversation, you will hear from our lovely staff members, Dr. Leslie Branch and the fabulous Miss Katie Gracely, and they will let you know how to apply for our grants and what that looks like. You will hear from Peter Goldmark and Sandra Goldmark, who are like folks who love New York City and have a poetic way of talking about their love of New York City and what that means. And you'll also hear from Nicole Lee, who is not only a grantee of ours for what she's doing as a community leader and as an entrepreneur, and also she's a civic leader because she's getting civically engaged to help New York City. But she's also one of the honorees of our New Yorkers for New York campaign that is putting 5 women up front as examples of individuals who are courageous in doing what they need to do to change New York City. So you're going to meet great people. You're going to meet each other. You're going to be able to talk about how to tell your story about how you're going to change New York City. And hopefully your storytelling will translate into the way you apply to us. And even if you don't get a grant from us, because it's kind of like trying to get into an Ivy League school, because the number of grant applications we get versus the money we get out is like, there is a disparity. But at the very least, we will help you become a better storyteller. We'll connect you to awesome people, and you'll be part of a powerful network that's here to change New York City. So again, my info is in the chat. Literally, get at me. Say what's up. What's going on, Dr. Harris? Do you really pronounce your name Rasan? Yes, you can forget the H's in there. It's Rasan. And let's get to know each other, and let's make sure that New York City is better than she ever was before, because we're making it equitable, we're making it accessible, and we're using our inclusive approach to make it more innovative and be the beacon on the hill for the rest of the world to look at. So that's what I got to say. I will put my info in the chat again for those who might have joined a little bit late. You might have missed it, but we lead with love. So I love Harlem. I love y'all. I love New York City. I love Citizens Committee. And hopefully that love is what's going to help New York City be what she needs to be for all people going forward. So that's what I got. I'm tossing back to you, Katie. Dr. Branch, I am just so excited that you're leading this conversation. I hope y'all get to know them and get to know each other, and it's going to be a fantastic evening.
You.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rasan. And before my colleague and co-facilitator, Dr. Leslie Branch, jumps into our more information about our neighborhood grant, something that Rasan mentioned is really using this platform as a way to bring people together, as a way to bring partners together, and share some of the awesome work that people are doing to help rebuild New York City. So first, I wanted to introduce, and we're really excited to have Peter Goldmark and Sandra Goldmark. So they're joining us today. Sandra is an associate professor of professional practice in the Department of Theater at Barnard College and has designed sets and costumes for theaters around the country. And she also serves as Barnard's first director of campus sustainability and climate action. She's also the founder of Fix Up, formerly Pop-Up Repair. So if you all have been to different like farmers markets or seen the pop-up repair around the city, I know COVID times it's a little harder, but Sandra really helped spearhead that. And not only is that a great kind of initiative that employs local theater artists and other makers and technicians to fix household items, but is re-envisioning repair as a viable and necessary part of a sustainable circular economy. So we're really excited to have Sandra here, but they were also awarded a reduced reuse and repair grant from Citizens Committee in 2018 and 2020. So Sandra's kind of been a part of the Citizens Committee family for a long time. And she's been joined by her father, actually, Peter Goldmark, who's also a champion of environmental and social issues. He worked as a director of the Environmental Defense Fund's Climate and Air Program, was the president of the Rockefeller Foundation, the executive director of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and the budget director of the state of New York. So really good to have you both here. Great to have two advocates for social and environmental issues here today. And I know briefly, you two are both working to help rebuild New York City, and that, as Rasan put it, kind of through poetry. So you have a book coming out, Haikus for New York City. So can you tell us a little bit more about that and what inspired you to create it?
Well, the truth, Katie, is I didn't try to create a book of poetry. I've been writing poetry for myself very privately for 40 years now. It's a way, I've had some very high pressure jobs. I've been in difficult situations, crises. And it was a private way for me to figure out what was really going on inside me, or if I saw a beautiful place to capture it and write it. And it was a total accident. I wrote some haikus about New York City and I showed them to a couple of friends and they said, "Oh, Goldmark, these are terrific. You've got to publish these." And I said, "No." But things went downhill from there and they beat me up and so on. So I showed it to a publisher and the book is coming out the end of this month and it's called Haikus for New York City. And it's a set of haikus, which are that very tight, disciplined Japanese form of poetry, with illustrations by my daughter, Sandra, who's on the call with me. And it was such an experience to do this together because it's like two different art forms that come together and fit. So that's been fun. But I didn't set out to do it. This is just one of those things that happen in life. But I know we've only got a couple of minutes, but I want Sandra to tell you what it's like to do the illustration. But can I read one or two haikus? It takes 20 seconds or 15 seconds. You see what they're like?
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's a short one you all recognize about New York City. How can so much wealth, ambition, and talent fit on one small island? Now, here's one that's irreverent. All of you have ridden the subways in your time. I'm still riding them, even though we're supposed to be careful. So here's one, and it says, just a minute. Let me get the page. Yeah. It says, there is a train directly behind this one. New York City bullshit. So you can see some of them can be saucy or reverent. And here's the one I love the most, partly because of the illustration Sandra did with it. And I think all you New Yorkers will recognize this. You can't rush it or chase it, but sometimes in New York, peace will find you. So maybe that's a good moment to hand it over to Sandra, because she did a picture for that one. I wouldn't have known what to do. I can't draw worth it, but she did a picture that just fills that out. So what was this like for you, Sandra? And why did you hook up with this nut to do this book?
Yeah, that was hard to avoid. So I wound up drawing over the summer. My father said sort of casually, "Oh, my haikus looks like we're going to try to publish them. Would you maybe be interested in drawing some illustrations for them?" I thought, sure, it's summer, I can draw a couple of quick drawings, it'd be fun. And we wound up really collaborating on the book. There's a whole series of drawings, and in some ways I was hesitant at one point, because as you heard, the poems speak for themselves. They don't need to be illustrated in the sense of like, tell you what's happening. But it turned into, for me at least, a journey of not trying to draw something about the poems, but trying to create a conversation between the drawings and the poems. And so the poems, as you heard, they look at New York, they observe things that we've all seen. We all have that moment on the train platform where we know there's no train coming, or those moments of peace that can sometimes come in this busy city. So for me, drawing these pictures was about really listening and looking and seeing this beautiful city that we all share and appreciating it in a way. So my hope for the book is that it helps New Yorkers who have been through so much in this past year kind of remember where we are and pause a little.
So it's really an effort both to rediscover the city in this very difficult period, to honor the strength and diversity and resilience that the city brings us and finds in ourselves, because we don't know what's coming next. So it's important to know that we not only belong to this city, we have the city and everything it stands for as a resource. It's not old normal we're going back to. None of us are wise enough to know what it is, but we're out on the road now and we're going somewhere else.
Well, thank you both so much for sharing that. And what a great way to kind of ground us as we go into discussions around the work that other people are doing. So, and Peter, something you said is resilience. And I think a lot of the community groups that are here today, and kind of even with our grant programs, the types of things that we're looking to fund, we're really looking to hear from you all. What's important to you? How do you think we can create a resilient New York City? You all have been doing this work even before COVID hit. So really looking forward to kind of setting that tone and that theme of resilience really through this conversation. So thank you both for being here. And how can people access the book once it launches?
It's going to be in bookstores the end of this week, or the end of this month of March, or the first week of April. Or you can go on Amazon and order it. I'll put the title on the chat list, but the title is Haikus for New York City. And it's by Peter and Sandra Goldmark. And there is a pre-order list on, but I don't think you can read the book now on Amazon, but there is a account set up for it. But I'll put the title on the chat thing, and then everybody can see it.
And did we say that a portion of the proceeds go to CitizensNYC? Did we even say that? I can't remember. But
no, we didn't say it. Good point, Jen. And who suggested that be the organization we support? It was her.
It was a good story, because we were thinking, what organization could we partner with? We love this city, and CitizensNYC. I was a grantee for a community project that I started on maternity leave, home with my kids, running repair shops. And that project grew and evolved, and twice received support from the Citizens Committee that was really transformative. And it was a community project, and it was a kind of thing that was nobody else really understood, I felt like. So I have a real affection in my heart for this organization. So thank you again.
Well, thank you. Thank you for all the work you're doing. Thank you for keeping us in mind. And thank you for also highlighting the fact that part of the proceeds from the book will also go to Citizens Committee. So Sandra, I saw that you linked it. in the chat, so thank you, but we'll also share it in our follow-up email after this. So appreciate you both. Thank you for being here. And we also have another grantee partner here today that I'm really excited to introduce and have speak, Nicole Lee. So Nicole is another amazing community advocate, entrepreneur, local leader, and she's also one of our honorees for the New Yorkers for New York campaign, which I'll also link in the chat for more details. So through this campaign, we're honoring 5 amazing women who are helping to rebuild New York City. So we're really excited that Nicole is the first honoree that we're highlighting and is here today. So she's also a CitizensNYC grantee partner, and you have more than a decade of experience managing small businesses, serving as a founder of Mother Goose Daycare, Wink Beauty Parlor, and Journey Through Seth's Eyes, which provides a safe environment and resources for children with special needs, all in her neighborhood of Jamaica Beach, Queens. So really excited to have you here, Nicole. And so, you know, a lot of people in the room maybe are applying for a grant for the first time. I also see some other veterans in the room too, so really great to have you here. But Nicole, I'd love to hear more from you just about your work, but also your experience with applying for a grant for the first time and how that kind of worked from start to finish.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me again, Katie and Rasan. I appreciate all the accolades. I like to call myself a serial entrepreneur, specializing in multiple different realms, from special needs advocacy to beauty to consulting. So I'm just grateful to be a part of this program and this organization for a couple of years now. I'll tell you about my experience first. I applied for 2 grants for my beauty business to give self-esteem in and out of beauty workshop classes for the youth. That was 1 grant. And the second one was for special needs inclusion, bringing more resources for parents and children, outreach and community workshops for special needs families. That was the second grant I applied for. So the first year I applied for both of them, I actually was awarded both grants, which I'm grateful for. I was able to serve hundreds of families in Queens and even through the tri-state area. And it just actually expanded from there. And just like Rasan said, sometimes you don't always win every year or get grants every year, but with that, I believe that your network is your net worth. And from there, I've been on podcasts. I've been interacting with other people in the organization, doing collaborations throughout the city and abroad. So I'm just grateful for that experience thus far. Everybody was super helpful at first. To me, the application was easy to do, just your mission statement and what the work that you want to do going forward, some of the assessments in reference to how much you think you would need. So I think the process was fairly easy, and everybody was there helpful, phone call away or email away. So that was my own experience with that. Like I said, I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years. I am 39 years old. I am in Rockaway Beach, Queens. I believe Queens is the best city in New York City. I'm sorry, guys, if you live somewhere else, but I'm a Queens girl. So I basically started my entrepreneurship in I think it's 2008. My son is autistic. I couldn't find proper childcare for him. So I started my daycare. That daycare turned into a special needs daycare. Then that daycare also turned into a group home. We expanded for that for special needs families. I figured if once my son grew in a daycare, he went from nonverbal to verbal. He was in a D75 school. If you guys don't know what that is, that's the most restricted school for special needs kids, especially autistic kids. Now he's in a private school on a scholarship in Forest Hill. So I'm extra excited about that, bringing those resources to our neighborhoods and helping me just expand in a whole. That's exactly what I'm pushing for special needs inclusion. And also, I believe that beauty business is $1 billion business. And I feel that the Black and Brown community are underserved in that business. So I started a program with the help of Citizens Committee, bringing beauty trades back into our school system, helping our young girls with self-esteem issues and know that you are beautiful no matter what skin color you are, no matter if your hair is curly or straight, and just giving them the access to that in trades in our school. So we've done that for a couple of years now. Also, going to different schools around the area. And I'm just grateful for that. So thank you again for honoring me. Thank you for letting me be a part of this network. I will continue to do great work like I've always done. And I'm just excited to go further and expand. So with everything that I've accomplished thus far, I always feel that I can do more, and I've been doing more. And that's why I did a podcast, I think it was with Sick Empire. And the lady, she asked me about running for office, and she's like, what would you think? And I said, well, maybe I should. And that's when I actually put my application to run for office. So I'm excited about that too. We just finished a special election, and now we're going further into the primary. So everything that I've done is for the people. I'm actually the people, and I'm fighting for us to go further and just get more rights and access to capital and just the resources that we need in the whole. So that's just me in a nutshell. Thank you so much for everything. Thank you for the accolades. Thank you for acknowledging me. I'm just grateful to be here, and I'm just here to serve. My name is Nicole. If you guys don't know, Nicole means victory of the people, and I'm trying to do that. Yeah, be the victory for you guys. So thank you again, Rasan and Katie, for having me. I would definitely put my information in the chat, Megan. I'm running for City Council of District 31. Thank you, but I'll put that in there.
Great. Thank you so much, Nicole. I'm seeing so much love in the chat also coming at you. Same for Sandra and Peter as well. So really great to have you here. And honestly, there's 98 people in this chat right now. And I think each one of you are doing the work to really improve New York City in every one of your neighborhoods. So it's just really cool to hear, Nicole, about the work that you're doing, but just knowing too that a lot of you all, you know, it should be accessible for people to be able to do great work. So we're really hoping to do that through this grant as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Nicole. And last but not least, we have another partner on our chat, Kyle Gorman. So Kyle is from the Department of Transportation. And Kyle, I know right now you're going to say just a few words about yourself, but I'd love for you to talk for about a minute or so just about who you are and what you do at DOT. And then we'll have you speak for a little bit longer once we start talking about the grant application. So Kyle, you have the floor.
Thank you, Katie, and hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Kyle, as we already know. I'm from the Public Space Unit at the city's Department of Transportation. We are a little bit of a special part of DOT that really works with community-based organizations all across the city to develop public space programs that promote the use of streets as public space. And the biggest way that we have been doing that over the last year is through our Open Streets program, which I manage and which we'll touch on as to why I'm here tonight because of that a little bit later on in the presentation. So I'll hand it back to you now, Katie.
Awesome, thanks, Kyle. You're also getting some love in the chat too, from Niles French at New Dorp Bid. Great, well, thank you to our partners here that spoke and kind of set the tone for some of the work that you can do with these grants and how you can partner with other people. And I'm actually going to hand it over to my colleague Leslie, Dr. Leslie Branch, who is our wonderful consultant, community convener, survey data analyzer. You know, I'll let her talk a little bit more about herself. But also she's going to lead us through the grant application and answer questions. So Leslie, you have the floor.
Hey, good people. Good evening to you. And thank you for joining us for this neighborhood chat and info session. Thank you to our partners and the amazing work that you all are doing to help us stay afloat and thrive and survive during these very challenging times. Thank you also to Dr. Rasan Harris. He is very energetic and visionary. And also thank you to my co-facilitator, Katie G, as I like to refer to her as. She is amazing. And just a little bit about who I am. So as Katie said, I'm a consultant relatively new. I think I came aboard the end of November and have been working to create surveys to learn more about you and the things that are important to you and how we can better serve you and the communities that you all are serving. When I'm not consulting with citizens, I am an associate professor at a place called Metropolitan College of New York. I teach in their school for business. And when I'm not doing that or consulting with citizens, I direct a policy center called the Think Tank with an organization called the Thinkubator. And when I'm not, no, I'm just kidding. So I have a lot of jobs and I keep very busy, but that's because there's a lot of work to do. And we are, again, extremely grateful to you all that you do not think it robbery, that you put your shoulders to the wheel and you push forward. So I'm going to talk about, the application process for the All in Neighborhood grant. And I'm going to start off with an introduction of Citizens. Again, Rasan talked about who we are as an organization, but for the benefit of some of us who may have joined late, I'm gonna just let you know who we are. And so Citizens NYC is a nonprofit that started in the 1970s. And it started during the fiscal crisis in New York City because New York City really wasn't able to provide basic services for the city like sanitation. And so Citizens NYC is really a way to support volunteers to come together and to improve the quality of their lives in their neighborhoods and in their communities. And Citizens NYC mission continues to be the same to this day. And as Dr. Harris alluded to earlier, he was sort of baptized by fire in his role of CEO because he came aboard pretty much the minute the city went into crisis mode with regard to the COVID outbreak. And so again, the mission continues to be the same, and that is to help New Yorkers, you folks, especially those in low income communities, to come together to improve the quality of life in your neighborhoods. And so who are we not? Citizens NYC is not a New York City agency. And we raise funds from foundations, from private companies, and from individuals like you. And so we thank you for everything that you do for Citizens NYC and for your communities. And so Citizens NYC supports community building projects that are carried out by resident-led groups to address the issues that those groups identify as important to them. And we support community building projects by volunteers. And so by volunteers, we mean groups that can range anywhere from tenant associations to block associations, to community gardens, to Friends of Parks, and any group that is doing good work to help their community and their neighborhood. And so how do we do that? I'm glad you asked. And so there are 5 pillars that Citizens uses as a way to support the work that you all do. And those 5 pillars include the obvious: small grants, right? The second pillar is by amplifying community voices. And through Citizens' rich network and their connectedness, we help amplify the voices of our partners like you who are doing the amazing work that it is that you are doing, because we really believe that in some ways you all are the best kept secret in New York City. And we don't want you to be a secret. We want people to know about the work that it is that you are doing. And so organizations often make assumptions about what people are experiencing on the ground. And we believe in communities speaking for themselves. And that's why we regularly survey our extensive network of grassroots communities and groups to understand what their particular needs and challenges are. So if you see a survey from us, definitely respond to it and get it back, because it helps us to better help you and to know what it is that you need. A third way that we help advance the work is by convening grantee partners and conferences, similar to this, right? And so we've launched Citizens NYC Live, which is our virtual series of programming to discuss community survey results and hear directly from grantees about what's happening in their communities. Our fourth pillar is through thought leadership and advisory councils. And as CEO of Citizens NYC, Dr. Harris is leveraging his more than 20 years of experience in leading nonprofits to steer the organization and New York City toward a more equitable future. In addition, our advisory council is actively engaged in work providing key programmatic and financial recommendations. And our fifth and final pillar is partnerships, right? Collective action matters. There's a reason that all of the wildebeest in, the Serengeti are in a group. And the reason is so they don't get picked off, right? So not that we're wildebeests and not that this is the Serengeti, but I think you get the analogy. And so through our partnerships, we really try to build relationships with New York City's elected officials, with government agencies, and like-minded organizations that can expand our network of grassroots leaders and strengthen our community relations. And so we are excited that a few of our partners are here today, and we are so thankful for everything that it is that they are doing to strengthen their communities and to partner with Citizens NYC. So thank you. All right, so moving forward. Oh, thank you for the applause. Appreciate it. And so in moving forward, I'm going to move into the context for why, or for the grant making process, if you will, or the grant, you filling out the application. And so the good news is you don't have to be a grant writer in order to fill this out. As Nicole spoke to, the application and the process is pretty straightforward. So you don't have to be a grant writer or an expert to fill out the application. And many people who are applying are working on a grant application for the first time. So it might seem a little daunting or a little scary, but once you get into the application and you see it, it's nothing to, be fearful of. And so we keep the application simple and straightforward. And so the nice thing about it is once you do this the first time, you can save the information and it can serve as a template for other grants that you might apply for from other organizations, right? And so the tip there is to create a Word document and put all of those answers to the questions in it. So this way, when you are filling out grant applications from other organizations, you can just go back to that Word document, copy and paste into the grant application that you are working on. Another good reason to create that Word document is because for our grant application, it is online. And sometimes technology gets a little wonky. Your browser might crash or I don't know, something might happen. And so rather than starting from square one with trying to remember a lot of the things that you put in, you can simply go to your Word document, that trusty Word document, grab the information that you need and deposit it into the application. All right. And so today we're going to go through some of the key things that we're looking for in our application. And we're going to do our level best to answer any questions that you might have. So does that sound like a plan? A nod of the head, yes, no, yes, thumbs up, thumbs down. All right. Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. And so the goal of the grant, grassroots organizations who are responding to immediate needs of struggling New Yorkers will receive unrestricted grants of up to $10,000 to open things like food pantries, distribute surgical masks, arrange elder care check-ins, or design other projects to meet your specific neighborhood's urgent needs amid COVID-19 crisis. And the grant program is a renaming of our Keystone Neighborhood Grants Program, which for decades has been awarding micro grants to resident-led groups to improve the quality of life in their neighborhoods. Grant-supported projects in the arts, health, environmental justice, beautification, tenants' rights, and more. So Katie, at this point, should we be pulling up the application, or do we do that a little bit later?
Yeah, so I did link our grants page in the chat. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to drop the actual PDF of the application in the chat so that you can download it, look at it later, and go through it when we do breakout rooms later as well.
Great. So make sure when we go to the breakout, you have that application. So this way in your small groups, you'll be able to go through the application and see that it's really simple and straightforward. Okay, so again, applications are accepted from resident-led groups and nonprofits based in any of New York City's 5 boroughs, right? Any of New York City's 5 boroughs. And so examples of such groups, again, include block association, tenant associations, and that includes NYCHA, civic groups, community gardens, student groups, PTAs, and staffed nonprofits. Groups may be longstanding. They can be newly established, or they can be in the process of forming and are not required to have nonprofit or 501c3 status. So you can be an old timer, as old timers say. You can be in the process of forming, or you can be formed a short time ago. And it is, again, not necessary that you have 501c3 status. So who should apply? Grassroots community groups, organizing groups in New York that are doing work that is developed and led by groups of individuals who are directly experiencing the issues and the challenges that the project addresses. So if there is something that is happening in your neighborhood or community that the group believes needs to be addressed, then you should be applying for the grant. Groups that are doing work that address important community concerns, if you're doing that, you should apply for the grant. If you are doing work that brings neighbors together and contributes to building stronger communities, then you should be applying for the grant. And finally, if you are doing work that has a strong vision for social justice and is committed to working toward movement building, you guessed it, you should be applying for the grant. And I'm going to move now to funding priorities and the things that Citizens funds. So Citizens NYC quickly shifted the focus of funding priorities after findings of a survey that Citizens conducted of their extensive grassroots network highlighted urgent priorities across the city. And those urgent priorities included financial assistance, youth and education initiatives, food, care for older adults, mental health care, physical health care, community police relations, and race community relations. And we will be prioritizing funding to groups doing work in one of the 5 urgent priorities as reported in our surveys. And so that's another reason why when you see a survey from Citizens, you should definitely fill it out, because it's how we find out from you, who are the boots on the ground in communities and neighborhoods, what are the urgent things that your communities and neighborhoods need. And we will also prioritize groups that have a budget of less than $70,000. And that public schools are exempt from that 70,000 criteria. And we look for projects that are developed and led by groups of individuals, right? So not individual-led projects, but a group of individuals who have like-mindedness and who are working collectively to address an issue. Those are the things that we are looking to fund. So again, it has to be projects that are developed and led by groups of individuals who are directly experiencing the issues that the project addresses, that are clear and thoughtful, that address important community concerns, and that contribute to stronger community and bring neighbors together. Applications for the grant are accepted on a rolling basis and can be submitted via the online form. Finalists will be invited to complete a supplemental application form before mid-April. And applicants will be notified of grant decisions by late May 2021. And you can apply at Citizens website, https://citizensnyc.org/grantmaking. And I believe KDG put the link in the chat. And if you have any questions with regard to the grant application, you can reach out to us by email at grants@citizensnyc.org. And for a detailed video of how to fill out the application, you can watch our orientation video at, I believe, a link that will be provided in the chat as well. And so what are the benefits of applying for the grant? Well, I mean, obviously, it's where the money resides, right? Are you guys familiar with that video? If not, I won't sing it. But anyway, one of the biggest benefits is being funded, right? But it is a competitive process. And as we mentioned before, filling out the application will provide you with a template that you can use for other grant applications that you plan on applying for. Okay, so we don't ask for anything in the application that you can't apply for other funding opportunities as well. And as Dr. Harris mentioned at the top of our get together, we will be highlighting all applicants in our newsletter. And so clearly it's a competitive process. And as Nicole stated, it's not every time that a person is funded, but even if you're not funded, the benefit of applying means that you are now pulled into a network that will publicize and advertise and just amplify the great work that you're doing in your community. And that has benefits as well. And as more funds are raised by our amazing development team, and I think I saw someone from our development team on the Zoom earlier, we will have the opportunity to award more rounds of grants. And so your application will be prioritized for consideration during that review period. All right. And I'm going to pause here and check in with my colleague with regard to where we are at in the agenda.
Yes, awesome. Thank you, Leslie. And you shared a bunch of great information. And we also had a lot of great questions in the chat. So kind of your overview of really grounding of who should be applying, who is eligible for grants, and really focusing on that very small grassroots community groups are the types of groups that we prioritize. I've tried to answer some questions in the chat, but we will also have a time for Q&A. So if your question wasn't answered, we'll do some breakout rooms and we'll kind of float between those rooms and try to answer questions, but also keep those in your back pocket for when we have the Q&A section as well, so that everybody can hear what your question is. But before we go into breakout rooms, I wanted to leave some space for Kyle from DOT to share some information about our partnership with DOT. And this is actually a section on the application. You'll see it at the very beginning, asking you if you're planning to do any work with open spaces and if you're looking to apply for a permit. So Kyle's going to talk a little bit more about that partnership and what that looks like, so that if you're interested in applying for funding specifically for open streets, you have a better sense of what that might look like. So Kyle, I'm going to let you, you should be able to share your screen in a few seconds.
Thanks, Katie.
So of course, Laurie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. So let me share my screen and pull up the deck. So we're really excited about this partnership with Citizens Committee between the DOT and Citizens Committee to make open streets much more of a reality and more accessible to more New Yorkers this year. At the beginning of the conversation, we were saying that Citizens Committee is about empowering people to make New York City awesome and a better place to live. And open streets is definitely consistent with those goals. And we are really aligned, I think, as a community here to really make New York City the best place to live in the world and really help us recover from this devastating pandemic. So I'm just going to briefly go through what the Open Streets program kind of is. The caveat to everything that I'm about to say is that there is a formal application for 2021 Open Streets that is going to be released actually in a 1 week's time, next Wednesday, the 17th of March. It'll be posted on our website, nyc.gov/openstreets, and I'll share it, of course, with the Citizens Committee team so they can send it out within their network. So I just want to sort of underscore that you will have to apply both to host an open street as well as to receive funding from the Citizens Committee. So it is two separate applications. And even if you do apply for an open street, as much as I want to always approve every application that we do get, of course, not everything can be approved, but I will say over the last year, we have approved more open streets and other types of public spaces, more so than ever before. And we're really committed to making this year our best year yet. So with that, I'm going to just jump into the Open Streets program. Like I said at the beginning of the conversation, I work in the public space unit. We're a unique part of the agency. People really see DOT as a mobility and pure transportation agency, but a huge part of transportation is really that our streets are our most valuable and ubiquitous public spaces here in New York City. Parks are not everywhere and other types of open spaces are not everywhere, but I can guarantee you everyone who lives in New York City has access to a street, and that presents a really unique opportunity to enhance people's quality of life through these public space interventions. So that's the sort of little part of DOT public space where I work. To recap everything that we've done with open streets during the pandemic, we've implemented 50 miles of regular open streets, which are bike and pedestrian oriented corridors that still allow for limited vehicle access, but it really is making it a much safer and much more prioritized corridor for pedestrians and cyclists. Our other type was open streets restaurants, which was developed to support businesses that have been hit really hard during this pandemic and added a lot of just vibrancy to our streets. And the third type of open streets was more oriented towards actually transportation, was doing temporary bike lanes with like construction barrels, but now have actually evolved to having the full Kermit Green treatment and are part of our permanent New York City bike network. So those were the different types of open streets. And it really was a citywide program. I'm really happy that some of our partners are here tonight that maybe you'll get to hear from in the breakout room, and really all the sweat equity that they put into making this program a success. But we really do have open streets, all the way as far south. We have Niles from the South Shore of Staten Island, and as far north as Riverdale in the Bronx, and then everything in between. So this really is a 5-borough program that really we want to make, like I said, as accessible to as many communities in New York City as possible. This is a photo of one of our most popular open streets on 34th Avenue in Jackson Heights, Queens, which is a completely community-oriented space. So the day-to-day management is left up to a community coalition that basically has evolved out of the pandemic and this open street. It wasn't necessarily an organization that existed before, but they saw that this was a huge asset and the city needed a little bit of help with its execution. So they sort of, like I said, in this grassroots way, really evolved and did something honestly really amazing. It's one of it is the longest open street at I think almost like 1.3 miles. It has great programming. It has yoga, English classes, Kids for Kids. We're going to host graduation for elementary schools on the open street in a couple months. So I cannot really think of a more positive example of open streets and really using streets as a tool for recovery from this pandemic and having people able to gather in a safe way. Our other type of open streets, like I mentioned, was open streets restaurants, which is really to assist businesses that have been hit hard. This is a photo of another great open street that's community driven and community led, is the Vanderbilt Avenue open street in Prospect Heights. Businesses are able to extend all the way into the street since it's closed, which gives them added capacity. In the picture shown, these businesses actually are able to only participate in outdoor dining when the street is closed because they have a bus stop in front of their business. So open streets is the ability to give more businesses the ability to do outdoor dining when indoor dining is so restricted. And there's obviously, some serious concerns about that. So this is really about making businesses have the ability to just stay afloat. There's literally hundreds of businesses across the city that participate in this program, and many have indicated that without the added benefit of open streets, they might have permanently closed. So we're committed to helping as many businesses as we possibly can through the program as well. And the last thing I want to touch on is that we do work with a whole different slew of types of partners to make open streets happen here in New York City, which is where the great synergy is, I think, with Citizens Committee that doesn't have a lot of barriers to entry for different types of community-based organizations that really just want to improve their own community. So basically, there's a few different types of partners. There's business improvement districts, which are organized groups of businesses that have a central entity that take on public space stewardship as a sort of standard operating practice. We have other types of mission-driven community-based organizations that aren't necessarily a bid, but still are a formalized entity. We have groups of restaurants who have come on and take on the management of open streets, especially to help them sort of be able to operate their business better. And the point that I already touched on is that something that's new for DOT especially is that we are open to working with more informal groups of organization, of people that want to execute open streets and don't necessarily have a 501c3 status or that sort of formal sort of entity sort of status, which is a huge opportunity. Obviously, there's also some challenges related to that, but I will say that we are open more so than ever before to working with different types of partners here in New York City. So that pretty much wraps up all of my deck here. Like I said, in 1 week's time, we'll be releasing the application on Wednesday the 17th. We'll share it with Citizens Committee, so everyone here should be able to receive it in that channel, but please feel free to visit our website, nyc.gov/open-streets, or here is my email. You can ask me about open streets items only if you want, and we can definitely discuss more. So Katie, I'm going to hand it back over to you now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kyle. Really good to have you talk more about the Open Streets program. I know there were a few questions in the chat just about how the Open Streets program connects with our grant program. Is it two separate funding opportunities? So just wanted to clear some of that up. Really with our application, our funding up to $10,000. Of course, there's going to be a range of the types of grants that, or the amount that people get with their grant program. But if you are specifically excited to do something on an open street, either start an open street or carry out programming in an open street, you'll see on the application that you can check a certain box. That's going to be really helpful for us, that if you do want to carry out an open street initiative, we can connect you to the right people like Kyle. We'll have a separate orientation as well. It'll be a little bit more support in terms of that open street programming. So you would get that support, but also the funding to carry it out. But it doesn't mean that on your application, you're only applying for open streets. So just wanted to clarify that as well. So next, I'm going to hand it over to Leslie, but she's going to talk about in terms of next steps and activity that we're going to do. And then Kyle, if you can stay on to answer any questions, that would be amazing.
Yeah, happy to, yes.
Cool, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Katie. So next up, we are going to move into questions about the application. And we're going to break into, wait, hang on a second. Yes, I believe this is the point where we're breaking out into small groups. Am I correct in that?
Yes, I am just going to ask, sorry, tech issue, University Heights, Deborah Scott, I'm just going to stop your screen share since that was open to everyone. I've now put it only me sharing the screen. But you're exactly right, Leslie. We're going to do small breakout rooms for about 10 to 15 minutes. And what we're going to do is in your breakout rooms, if you can review the application, and talk about things that stand out to you in your group, things that you might have questions about, what didn't you understand? So ask those questions and kind of go through the application in that small group. And then we're going to come back with a larger group and kind of go over some of these questions. So again, if you have questions in the chat that weren't answered, that's going to be your time that you can ask those when we come back to the larger group. So you're going to have about 4 people in your group. If you can make sure that you assign one person who is a facilitator, so keeping your group on track with going through the application and coming up with questions you might have, as well as a note taker as well. And then someone who, one brave soul to report back to the group to talk about the questions that you had. So wanted to point out as well before we do breakout rooms, and I know that it's around dinner time, so if people have to hop off, we understand. You're still going to get this entire recording and updates after, but I'm going to share in the chat one, the PDF for the application so that you as a group can go through it. So here is the PDF as it's loading. And then also the link to our website. You all are going to know this super well because we keep popping it in the chat, where you can actually access the online application. So any questions before I put you all into your breakout rooms, or is the mission clear?
Hi, the mission is clear. Hi, Katie, how are
Hey,
you?
good, how are you? Good to see
I
you.
just wanted to say I can't type in the chat. I'm having problems typing in the chat. I don't know why.
Okay, well, I'm going to come to your room, your breakout room, and we
Okay.
can talk more with that tech, okay?
Awesome, thank you.
Of course. Great. All right, well, you're going to see something pop up on your screen that will say join breakout room. So I'm going to send you off. Rooms are open, so if you can join those, we'll be floating around to answer questions, but you have about 10 minutes in these breakout rooms. I'm doing a little bit of shuffling, just so you all know. I'm gonna hop into some other breakout rooms, but Stephanie, Spencer, seeing a few people that are still on here. Do you need help getting into a breakout room, or?
There was no one in my breakout room. I was alone.
Okay. Well, I am going to assign you. That's what I'm actually working on right now. I'm shuffling some people around, so because I can see when people are by themselves. So if you could, Stephanie, go back into that room. I'm not sure, Maria, if that happened to you too.
I don't know how to get into the room. What do I do? Press join?
Yes, press join would be perfect, and then I'll move you around.
Yeah, I had the same issue. I was in the room by myself.
Okay, awesome. Who is that? Angie? So
Yes.
Angie, I'm going to move you around. If you can join your room again, I'm doing some shuffling. Or I think I can do this actually. Maria, did you have the same issue?
Yeah, I was in the room alone, so.
Okay. So let me, again, shuffling people around. We have a lot of groups, so I want to make sure. So Maria, I'm going to move you. Do you remember which room you were in?
20.
20, perfect. Oh, someone is in your room now, Spencer.
Okay.
Awesome. So if you can try to rejoin, but if you're having issues, let me know.
I don't know how to rejoin. I don't see
Okay.
anything.
Let me see if this. All right,
Oh.
do you get a notification?
Oh my God, we went from 81 to 9. New Yorkers be gone.
Wow. Are people still in their breakout rooms?
Probably.
They must be in their breakout.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go on a breakout smoke then. I'm gonna take like a few minutes. Okay, I'm gonna do my little breakout. Okay, I'll be back.
Oh, see.
Welcome back. Hey, everybody.
Katie.
I know there were a lot of rooms to get to. So sorry about that, but good to see you all. So if you had any specific questions for me, Deborah, I know I'm looking at you. Sorry we didn't get to chat, but you can always email me. Again, I'll put my contact information in the chat. But I think people kind of had a varying experiences in your breakout rooms, right? Some people were connecting and chatting, which we'll definitely have time to do that later as well, just so you all know, really having this as a platform to come together and network and share the work that you're doing. Some people had very specific questions about the application, which is great. What we're going to do now is actually focus on those questions that you have for the application. So what doesn't make sense? What do you want to make sure that you ask about specifically with the application? Again, I know there's some people in the room that might want to talk about their project and their specific work, but I want to make sure the questions asked can really apply to everybody in the room. With that being said, if you can raise your hand, so you'll see that there's like a reactions button down there. There's like a little raise hand, so you can see I'm doing it now. I know some people have to hop off, which is totally fine. I know you have family, other meetings, community board meetings, all that fun stuff. So we'll make sure that we get to questions, but again, we'll share the recording of this Zoom later. So I see a hand, John. I'm going to ask you to unmute so you can ask your question.
Yes. Hi, Katie. Thank you. Our group, had some difficulty accessing the application, so we didn't have a lot of time. But one of the questions has to do with a specific budget. It's on page 6 of the online application. And all they ask for is the amount requested, but there's no submission of a full budget, just to clarify.
I'm so glad you asked that, especially with people who have applied to our grant before or other grants. You're like, don't I have to say where I'm spending this money? That's not a trick question. So as Leslie mentioned before, this is the first broad general application. If you're considered a finalist in mid-April, kind of with our first round of funding that we'll be giving out, we'll send you, we kind of call it a supplementary application, but it's really asking you additional questions about your project to give us a better idea of that nitty gritty. But of course, trying to make it accessible, we want to make sure that we don't make you go through a full budget if in the end we're not going to give you a grant. So great question, John. I'm really glad you asked that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So next, Eva, I see your hand. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hi, everybody. So yeah, I wanted to ask because I've applied in the past under a different, the program name. And so now we have a 501c3. I think that's what it is, right? 501c3. So what I wanted to find out is, do I apply now under that 501c3?
I'm muted, sorry, because I'm answering your question. So that is a great question. If you have a new group name or if you want to apply under 501c3, that's completely fine with us. Again, you don't have to be a 501c3, so don't feel like you have to apply if you have one under that group name. What we do ask on the application is if you've applied and gotten a grant or applied for a grant with us before, just making sure that you're letting us know what that previous group name was so that we can make sure that we are putting in the right information into our database. So again, new name is great, is fine. Very exciting too when you have a 501c3 and growing into a larger organization. Just let us know what your past name was too.
Okay.
Great. So I'm gonna, I think Harold was next, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna try to do this in the order that I'm seeing hands. So Harold, what's your question?
One of the things that was in our chat, I heard Dr. Leslie talk about priority to people who have suffered from COVID-19. For me, my application has to do with the emergency planning for my community. It has nothing to do with, well, it has something to do with COVID-19. But did I hear wrong that you guys give priority to people that have suffered through prior or doing something for COVID-19?
Yeah, no, so that's a great question. So something we did in March was we did put out a survey asking people what are the biggest issues in your community, especially in light of COVID-19. So although with these funding areas where we talk about access to food, we talk about support for youth, we talk about groups addressing community police relations, we also realize that all of this work is intersectional and that especially with emergency planning, that's still working towards creating a resilient New York City. So that being said, as we're looking at groups doing specific work, maybe if you are directly, focusing on youth support or directly focusing on access to food in a community that was really hard hit by COVID, we'll prioritize getting that money on the ground quickly to your community. But it sounds like the work that you're doing would still fall under those priority areas. Does that make sense? Or Leslie, is there anything else that you wanted to add with that?
No, I think you pretty much summed it up.
Awesome. But of course, with your specific project, if you have questions, please reach out to us via email. We'll put our information in the chat again, and we can talk more deeply about the work that you're doing and how it can fit into the grant application. Awesome.
So
Thanks, Harold.
Harold, I'm just curious, in your group, were you guys able to see the actual application? Because there's a section.
Yes,
with,
I was, but I've gone through this twice already.
Oh, okay. All right.
You could be leading this workshop, Harold.
For real.
Awesome. So I'm gonna, Yukio, I'm gonna ask you to unmute so you can ask your question.
Yes, my question, hi, I'm sorry. My question is, can I consider this general grant? And it used to be like, Citizen New York City has like, much lower the award amount. And that was very, very strictly project grant and has to be only for consumable items. But, if this is changed like a general grant and it can be applied to like, for instance, can I think about to allocate some money just to pay for me as well? Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm really glad you brought that up because yes, our application this year looks different. And we also have no budget restrictions. I say that with a grain of salt.
Wow, that's, wow.
I say that with a grain of salt because if you are awarded a grant, we'll talk about some of the things that we do expect. So for example, if you do get $10,000, we don't want you spending it on one computer or something like that. But you can spend some of that money towards stipends or very small obviously a lot of the groups working or applying for a grant don't have staff, but that can go towards some stipends or paying for a very small portion of salary. So again, we realize, especially with COVID right now, it's really hard to access funding and just to keep your work going, which is why we lifted that. And really it's general operating funds versus restricted budgets. So.
That sounds great.
Awesome. Barbara, I think, again, I'm trying to go in the order that I saw hands raised. Barbara, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hey, Katie.
Hey.
How you doing? This is Barbara from 6B. And I'm echoing because I'm on the phone too, so I better hang that up.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry.
No worries. Okay. And if you're still getting an echo, what we can do is you can put your question in the chat.
No, I'm just going to leave the meeting on the phone.
Okay.
Because I got on that first because I was sneaking in from work. Anyway. Okay, so I'm interested in hearing about those budget restrictions being lifted. Now, we had applied a couple of years ago, then the pandemic hit and you shifted some priorities. So that left us with some urgent needs that we didn't address that are short-term urgent needs, which also influence and benefit our programming and community needs. So they address a lot of safety issues and for the community, for our programming to be able to go on. So I'm curious if you suggest that we first do two mini grants? Like, is it possible to get one sooner? Like, what would be the earliest time frame if you approved a smaller grant? When would we have that money for certain materials we needed to start the ball rolling? And I guess we would give you both applications so you could maybe see the long term. Anyway.
Yeah, great question, Barbara. So
wait, now I can't.
Oh.
Can you hear? Hold on, Katie. Hold on. Now I muted you. Okay, there.
Awesome. Oh, and I'm echoing. I'm going to mute you. Okay, Barbara? So in terms of the grant timeline, again, because this is a rolling application, so the sooner you apply, the sooner you are most likely to get funding. We're really, as we continue to fund groups have submitted multiple applications in the past. As you heard, Nicole got 2 grants in 1 year, so definitely not out of the question. But there's a part on the application where we ask about when are you starting your project and when are you ending your project. So that's going to be really helpful for us if you're submitting more than one application, of which application to prioritize if we are funding you. So keep that in mind. Again, no funding guaranteed. Sometimes people come on here and they're like, why didn't I get funded? I'm like, I don't want to promise anybody funding, but we also, I know we've been saying this $10,000 amount, which is really a lot larger than our max of $3,000 in the past. But I do want to say our grants are not going to be on average $10,000. We really want to spread the wealth. So 10,000 is the max, but a lot of our groups are probably going to be receiving on average between $3,000 and $5,000. So keep that in mind, that when you are submitting a budget, as exciting as it might be to say, yes, we want 10,000 general operating funds, you may be getting less money. So again, those budgets will be really helpful in us deciding what your final amount will be. So I just want people to keep that in mind, that not everyone will get $10,000, unfortunately. But
is your corporate volunteer program up and running?
we have paused that with COVID. That's a great question, but if it does start up again, I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Of course. Awesome. So I think Jose was next. Go for it, Jose.
Hi there. Thank you. This is very informative, and thank you, Dr. Leslie. She went through all the application was really thorough, and I appreciate that. I had a few questions, and hopefully I'm not going to monopolize the time. But one question has to do with fiscal sponsorship or conduit. And so, you know, we're a large agency, Good Shepherd Services, and the programs I supervise, most of them are in either East New York or Red Hook. And in Red Hook, we have two RA presidents, two tenant associations. And so I'm wondering if both can apply and can both list us as a fiscal conduit or sponsorship. You know, we're the largest development in Brooklyn, second largest in the whole city, of course, but in Brooklyn, we're the largest. So working with two RA presidents, we want to, you know, play nice in the sandbox and try to figure out what makes the most sense. So that's my first question. I could ask the second question, but I want to give pause to answer.
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that, actually, because a lot of our groups in the past, when they've applied for an application or applied for a grant, if they aren't a 501c3, they've had to find a fiscal sponsor in order to get funds. With COVID, and again, lifting our restrictions, we actually will give grants as long as you're a group. We can disperse the funds to someone's personal bank account, and we will call a secondary contact on that application to confirm that that work is happening, and we'll be checking in with those groups. So that being said, just want to let everybody know that that is an option, especially because finding a fiscal sponsor can be really hard. But I'm glad to hear we have a fiscal sponsor in the room. It's great. Not that I'm offering you up to anybody else, but
right.
You being the fiscal sponsor won't impact anybody's application. We'll see that group as a separate group, and that fiscal sponsorship down the line will be, if they get a grant, you would be a part of the grant agreement process.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Of course.
My next question has to do maybe with Kyle. I think he's still on the call. And we submitted an application a year ago for one of the streets, and by then there was a turnaround in terms of restaurants being, you know, open and utilizing some of the streets. And so my question would be, do we have to resubmit a new application, or is that application we submitted still in the works? And maybe that's a conversation I could have offline with Kyle. So I just wanted to put that, but I wasn't sure if he was still on the call.
Yeah, I'm still here. Hello, Jose.
Hi.
Yes, you will need to reapply. All partners, existing or new partners, will have to apply again in 2021. So whatever site you wanted, you can reapply for that this year, or do a different one, whichever you prefer. And the application is coming out next week on Wednesday. I know that we're sort of already connected, kind of, but if you do not hear from DOT by the end of next week, feel free to definitely reach out to us.
Thank you, Kyle. My last question, and I promise not to monopolize the group time, has to do with schools. And so I'm curious to know, one of the schools, we have, of course, one school that might be interested in applying, but then in the school, there is I think a 501(c)(3) Friends of PS15 committee. And so is it possible that the committee or the group can apply while the school is applying as well?
Yes, both groups can apply. Just make sure that they're differentiating what their group names. And if they're collaborating at all, make sure that they put that on their application.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Okay, so I'm gonna try to remember this order. I think Roshana, and apologies if I'm saying your name wrong. I'm gonna ask you to unmute.
It's Rachna, and no problem. Thank you, Katie. I am applying for what was formerly the DSNY Zero Waste Schools grant. And so for me, filling out the form was a little bit just different because it's pretty different from their form. I guess one thing I was used to was like an itemized budget. So I guess you're not asking for that. If you can just confirm that to me. And then secondly, and then since it's for a school, I can skip over like the 501c3 and those kinds of things as well. So just if you can confirm those couple things, that would be helpful.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm also, we actually had Amber from DSNY join us last week. So when we follow up with you all, we're going to include her presentation as well. So anyone who is a part of a green team can get some more information with that. But you're absolutely right. The application does look a bit different and our partnership looks a bit different this year. If you are within the final groups that we might award, we'll follow up with you to get an itemized budget. So that's not on the original application, but you may be filling that out at a later date. So we will keep you updated, definitely. In terms of the 501c3, that section, again, it's not required. So you can skip that section if you don't have papers to submit. So don't worry about that either.
And I'm just because some of even just the questions, because it's like, how are you, a lot of this whole Citizens Committee grant is for how we're affecting the broader community, but so do I need to make that appeal in that case, even though it's really for the school, which of course affects the broader community? Do I need to explicitly say that, or is that implied?
Yeah, so when we think community is on different levels, right? We think about a block. It could be a neighborhood. It could be a borough. It could be all of New York City. But community also means school. So when when you're answering those questions, and anyone else working with school programs, if you're trying to figure out, okay, what defines community, just talk about your school community for those questions. If you are partnering with anybody else on the block or surrounding the school area or PTAs, things like that, you can definitely talk about that, but we see community as your school community as well.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right, so I think Marcus was next. Hey, Marcus, if you're still there, I'm asking you to unmute. Nope, which is totally fine. All right, I'm going to go to Deborah next.
Hi, good evening. So it's good to be here again. I just wanted to say, I was thinking about the Play Street, right? For Mr. Kyle, if I already applied for the regular 2 grants, I applied for grants, 2 of them actually, for 2 different programs in Crown Heights, Brownsville. And I live out here in Greenpoint, where they have this awesome space to do, it's like a block. You can actually block it off and there's nobody comes through there. Can I still apply for a program out here?
Yes, you can definitely apply for an open street on any of the 6,000 miles of streets we have here in New York City. I will say, on the Play Streets front, this is something that's a little bit more in the works, but we are trying to take ownership of Play Streets also moving forward. So it finally has a home, since it's always had so many.
Yes, I'm sorry to cut you off because I started off in play streets back in the early 80s and 90s. That's how all programs really started for our children, right? And so, yeah, that'd be awesome if you do that. Yeah.
Yeah, between SAPO and us, it's just we want to sort of, and it'll probably just be subsumed into this Open Streets program. But you could feel free for wherever you have play streets, definitely feel free to apply for that to be an open street, just so we can maybe even get the ball rolling on that.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. And as far as the second one was about the funds, I was glad to hear that maybe some of those funds can be used for some of our volunteers, because we have a lot of volunteers that out there that's always with us. And sometimes, you know, we grace them. I know I have with cards, as incentives or, gifts. And I think that is really nice that monies that may be allotted can also help our volunteers. And in our group, we had a wonderful young gentleman named Aziz, who has his projects. And I would like to know, is there someone at Citizens Advice that can help him? He's his first time. He's an awesome young gentleman. And I was just so enlightened by what he had to say. And he needs to be walked through and actually, carried through this process. Is anybody there that can help him?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's also something we offer in terms of project planning assistance and support. We are a small team, so our time is definitely limited. So we try to help as many people as we can through this process. But one, I would say the orientation video, Leslie and I put it together. We had a really great time. Bloopers are not included, thank goodness. But we actually go through the application step by step and talk about what we're looking for each question. So I encourage all of you to look at that. I'll make sure that's linked in the chat before you all leave, but that's on the grants page. So definitely encourage him to look at that. But then if he still has questions or concerns or anything, he can reach out to us. He can reach out to me. I'll put my contact information in the chat, but also our grants at citizensnyc.org. My colleague, Carla Naomi, manages that, and she's awesome, and she can answer questions and plan a phone call with him as well. So, and that goes for everybody too.
Great. And I just wanted to say one other thing. We got into this chat with Ms. Rodriguez, who was also in our chat. I don't want to take anything away from anybody, but I've seen somebody that I haven't seen in over 25 years that I started off in the Bronx and in the community. Oh, wow. It was awesome. And I so thank you guys. I was so happy to see him. And I just wanted to share that. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That's what this is about. I think also.
Yes, I used to go to his center to get help from him. I mean, that's like, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe I seen him in the back. I was like, Mr. Kaba, yeah, I was like, oh my goodness. Awesome. I'm just so delighted today. Thank you so much.
That's amazing. Awesome.
Yes.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Deborah.
Yes.
Oh my. For sure. That's what we're all about, is bring people together.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you so much. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, great questions, Deborah. I appreciate that. We have time for a few more questions. I know this has been a good night, but also a long night. So I want to make sure that I can get you all back to your families and other work that you're doing. So I saw David had his hand up, and then we're going to go to Mary Ann, and then we're going to wrap it up. So David, good to see you again.
Hey, Katie, great to see you again. How are you?
I'm good. And thanks for joining us tonight.
Yes, definitely. So I just had a quick question. So I know that with the funding, it gets announced or awarded in May, right? But I'm sure you're aware, we have a program and it's going on right now, and it's wrapping up at the end of April. So once we're applying for this funding, can the funding be used can we use our work scope of the program that we have going on right now, or do we have to plan a work scope for after May, for when the funding is awarded?
So glad you asked this, because every year this happens with our application, where funds go out closer to the summer, but work is happening in the spring. So one thing I want to point out is funding isn't guaranteed, but if you are awarded a grant, you can retroactively cover those expenses. So just keep that in mind, that you can, if you're awarded a grant, it can cover that work that you've done retroactively. So yes, you can definitely apply with that work scope.
Great. Thank you so much. And second question really quickly. So under the categories, I see that we have two options for categories. Our program is geared towards youth, right? But it could fall under three of these type of scopes where it comes to education or youth engagement or entrepreneurship, et cetera. So which ones do we actually select, or doesn't matter?
Such a good question. You know, I know a lot of the work that people are doing could possibly fall under all like 10 or 12 of those categories that we have. So just pick, I think it's those two, we're asking you to pick two. Just pick the top two, the ones that you think best represent the work that you're doing. It doesn't mean that there aren't other things that are involved in that, but yeah, if you're mainly working with youth, making sure that you put that youth development in the focus area. So yeah, that's a good question.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Awesome. So Marianne, last but not least, I've seen your hand up for a while, so thanks for your patience. Welcome. And what's your question?
Thank you so much. My question is really for Kyle. I'm curious to know, what is the process for putting the application in for an open street? And what kind of street would qualify to be an open street, and for how many hours would the street be open?
Those are pretty good questions. We actually leave it very open-ended. There are specific hours that you can do it. There's two types of open streets I'll also mention. I don't even want to get into it because I could give a whole presentation on just what the future of the program is going to look like in 2021. But please just look at our application that is going to be launched in a week. But to answer the questions that you had, basically what you'll need to upload is a basic site plan, a run a show, a management plan, and an operations plan. And then some other optional items if you're layering on other items, but those are the basics. And basically a open street, if it can be anywhere, depending on the types, it can run from anywhere from, the one type is 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. and the other type is 10 a.m. to midnight. The 10 a.m. to midnight is a little bit more oriented towards the business closure and supporting restaurants, and the other is more oriented towards, community-based organizations for programming. But it'll all make a lot more sense in a week because I feel like I'm not explaining it well.
I appreciate that. And also, this is for Katie. What about insurance? Who is responsible to get insurance for these events?
That is a great question. So your group is responsible for getting insurance. You can use the grant to cover costs of insurance for the work that you're doing. But yes, that's not something that we either give or cover.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, Kyle, go ahead, because open streets might be different.
We don't require insurance for open streets. That has been not a requirement last year, and it won't be a requirement this year. You should have definitely, of course, consider getting insurance, but it is not a requirement for our program.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I actually want to echo Kyle in that we don't require insurance. That is up to your group whether or not you would like to get it. So it's not something we require, but if you choose to get it, it's something that you would have to cover the cost for.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I'm just more concerned with the people that are attending and who may be opening up their space and the liability and the exposure. That's why, I could find out, but thank you.
Of course. Wonderful. Well, Dr. Branch, Leslie, take us home. I know we have 5 minutes, so I think instead of our additional breakout rooms, we had really good questions. So kind of telling us more about, or kind of wrap us up and tell us more about some future programming we have available that folks can attend.
Sure thing, Katie. And again, just want to say thank you to everyone who logged on tonight and went the haul with us, the long haul. So thank you. Want to give a special shout out to some of my students from Intro to Sociology who have logged on.
Hey, Dr. Leslie.
Hey, I appreciate you. Thank you. And so in terms of some upcoming events that we are having, so you should definitely look to join our Citizens New York City live events. And we have links to those that either are in the chat or will be being put in the chat. And on March, I want to say 18th it is, I think, we have a Rethink and Rebuild. We have Rethink and Rebuilds in March, April, May, and June of this year. And there will be links in the chat. And I believe the links for those events will also be on Citizens' website. And we will have neighborhood chats. The neighborhood chat for March is happening now. So thank you for logging on. We appreciate you. We will have neighborhood chats also in April, May, June, and July, and those links are in the chat as well. So if you liked what you heard tonight, definitely share, tell your neighbors, tell your friends, tell your neighbors to tell their friends, and so on and so on. Because at the end of the day, nobody gets anywhere on their own. But if we are trying to get somewhere, we do it collectively. And there is a proverb, I'm pretty sure I'm going to mess it up, but it's, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And with that, I, bid you all adieu and have a wonderful evening and rest of the week.
Just getting late. That's an African proverb.
Yes.
Yes, those are African proverbs.
Yes, yes, it is. Yes, it is.
God bless. God bless. It takes
Yes.
a village, and New York is the village.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
We are the village.
Yes.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye, you all. Thank you.
Again, good evening, everyone.
God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck. Naboka de Lupo.
Have a wonderful evening. Be talking to you soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, you all.
Thanks, Katie.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Bye.
Very
Bye.
informative. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we'll share this recording too with you all.
Great.
Great.
Be looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Thank you and good night.
Good night.
Oh, and I
Great.
realized I spelled my email wrong.
Uh-oh.
There we go. I don't know what the first one was.
Okay.
So I'll definitely be reaching out. Thank you so much. This was very insightful. Very insightful.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Marcus, for joining. And I know we didn't get to your question, so feel free to follow up if you have any questions.
Hey, no problem at all. Yeah, I definitely want to be a part of the network. So I want to know this is just the introduction right here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, welcome to the family.
All right, glad to be here. All right,
Have a good night.
have a good night, y'all.
My videos. I saw my video. I just getting late.
Oh yeah, hi. So we'll actually be sending a recording of everything. I know you joined late, so we recorded this whole session, so we'll email it to you so that you can watch from the beginning.
Okay. I was just asking if you get the video I sent it from our work. You didn't get the video.
Oh, yes, we got it.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you.
We got it. So thank you for sending it.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Awesome. And Leslie, I know you have your class after this. Long night.
Yeah.
I will see you tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you for everything. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. So Suleiman and Daniel, you guys can hop on the Zoom link on Moodle. I'll see you there at 7:30. All right.
Bye, you all.